Right, good afternoon, councillors, and a very warm welcome to everybody in the chamber today. Just before I start, I've left those two doors open just for a bit of health and safety while we're in the chamber, because we do have a number limit in here when we have a meeting, and it might sound a little bit odd, but actually we have had an earthquake here while we have had been giving speeches and bits. So, and if anything like that does happen, we'll take the lead from the chief executive, who in this file would need control. Okay. Right, so everyone welcome. I'm just going to open with our council prayer. God our Father, we gather here today and ask for your blessing on our work, on our thinking, on our dialogue, on our actions. Send us your spirit so that we may discern the better way, mindful of the impact on our decisions, especially on those that are most vulnerable and on the earth, our common home. Help us to treat each other with respect so that all can have their say. May we let in the fresh air of humour and good grace and not take ourselves too seriously. Let us not cling to long-held opinion, but be prepared to listen, to change our minds, to be surprised by insight and new perspectives. Let us leave the room for your spirit to inspire, to challenge, to change. And we make this and all our prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen. Right. I have no apologies for the meeting today, so we'll move into public forum. And item 4.1 on the agenda, we do have some speakers in public forum. So we've only got the two seats. Did you want to speak individually together? That's fine. Okay, so I've got Dr. John Jukes, Dr. Matt Shelton and Debbie Webster all speaking in public forum. Okay, what order would you like, Debbie? If I could just get you to, thank you, Councillor Gilmore.
Yeah. Someone else speaks. So you don't have to hold it. Oh, okay. You just see the light. So as long as the light's on, you can.
And if I can just get you to use the microphone, because when we record the meetings, it's very, very difficult if the mics aren't on to hear. Thank you. Right, we're all yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. What a great prayer. I must compliment you on your prayer, and I hope you all heard it and respond positively. Your God helps you respond to it positively. I'm going to repeat something I said last night in terms of Alvin Toffler's quote, which is to say that the illiterate of today are those that can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. At dental school, we were lectured that fluoridation of a water supply was a good idea. As an undergraduate, you learn to repeat what you are told. After graduation, continued repetition of such makes a statement dogma. Repeating that dogma publicly makes one an advocate, not an expert. To appreciate the difference is important. Studying a topic over an extended period, using all the sources of information makes one an expert. Certain beliefs become a leap of faith. It is not up to one to force their faith on another.
Terribly sorry to interrupt, but could I please get you to put that phone down? There are signs clearly outside that you're not allowed to record and also on reception. Thank you. I'm very sorry to have interrupted.
From the birth of my daughters until I arrived in Waipukuro, when we were not living in fluoridated areas, I gave my children fluoride tablets. CHB had a catchment of 1,300 people, 4,000 of which were fluoridated. After starting my practice in Waipukuro, I observed a high incidence of fluorosis in the children's teeth. I rang the provincial dental officer and reported this. I was told to keep it quiet. This was a prompt for me to start studying fluoridation. That was 40 years ago, and I've been studying it since. The conclusions that I have come to on fluoridation are: fluoridation of a water supply to prevent tooth decay doesn't work. The Twin City study between Napier and Hastings proved this. Fluoride is not a nutrient. tooth decay is a feature of diet and social circumstance. To put a medication in a water supply is a nonsense pharmacologically. Fluoride is a toxin even at low dosage. Fluoride in the form of what we put in the water is a category 8 poison. It is illegal to dispose of this in the air, onto the land or into the water, yet you can sell it to a local body to put into a water supply. Only 1% goes in the mouth, the rest goes down the drain and into the local rivers and harbours. I think that's very relevant these days when we're trying to clean up our water supplies. To be pouring a toxin in deliberately into the local water is ridiculous. Fluoride changes the structure of all bony tissues. It affects not only the teeth, but the entire skeleton. Fluoride interferes with thyroid function. Fluoride has an effect on the brain. It affects the pineal gland. It is better to treat the cause, not the symptoms. The children showing the higher occurrence of tooth decay with those showing poor diet and poor oral hygiene. Nothing to do with whether they were drinking fluoridated water or not. What is required is education and motivation. It is proven with the Scotland's Child Smile program. This needs to be communicated to the MPs to stop this directive mandating the district councils to fluoridate the water supply. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. I'll just check in. Do any councillors have any questions or queries? I might just have one for you, if I can. The water supply, so Waipokoro is unfluoridated. Is Waipawa fluoridated or unfluoridated?
When I arrived there, as I said, Waipawa was fluoridated. And we had some public meetings and managed to persuade them to stop doing it. But that was the only area that was fluoridated. All the other areas were unfluoridated. And if I can maybe pass on an observation of 40 years of practice, the children that were coming to me that had tooth decay problems went from the non-fluoridated areas. They were from the lower socioeconomic area of Waipokoro, which was fluoridated.
Thank you. We have Dr. Matt John. Dr. Matt Shelton.
Oh, good. Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Tracy and councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Matt Shelton. I'm a registered doctor still for 38 years, initially in anaesthetics and intensive care, but mostly in general practice in New Zealand subsequently. Additionally, I have a fellowship in a specialist level fellowship in environmental medicine and nutrition, and I've taught at tertiary academic level, training mainly doctors and allied health practitioners in nutrition and environmental medicine. There is no doubt that fluoridation is a very vexed issue, as it represents, in our view, the imposition of state power for its own sake, flying in the face of not only very clear evidence of harm, but all the precious principles of medical ethics: informed consent, bodily autonomy, the right to refuse medical treatment, the importance of protecting the unborn, and the precautionary principle. With medical treatments for human beings, if there are two apparently contradictory streams of evidence playing out, we should always take the precautionary approach and defer to the importance of avoiding harm. Yeah. In the case of fluoridation, however, the attempt by the CDC in the States, the Centre for Disease Control, which is not formally a branch of the US government, by the way, to stop the US government's own national toxicology program report on fluoridation tells us really, most of what we need to know. 30 years of research proving fluoride damages the brains of developing children and babies is consistent, significant, and meets the definition of proof of causation, and satisfies all the Bradford Hill criteria, which is a list of criteria which you use to attribute causation from a particular thing. So this is what American courts are being used to litigate at the moment. An attempt to suppress a meta-analysis. That means an analysis of a large collection of studies already done, showing that fluorinated babies and children have an IQ drop of, on average, 5 points compared to their unfluoridated peers. But it's actually too late because these studies have been published and have been public domain going back over 30 years at least, and have been litigated and described in many meetings such as this. But IQ is just one aspect of global brain function that fluoride damages. But what about behavior, attention span, mood, impulse control, judgment? Fluoride decision makers hold incredible power over the future potential and success for human lives, now and for generations to come. It is unacceptable for local decision makers to shirk this, saying that central government commands it and that they have the experts that cannot be questioned nor doubted. You do take an oath to the legal system. We understand that, certainly, but you make an unspoken but clearly superior obligation, in our view, to represent the interests, indeed, even do the bidding of your electors. And that requires you to at least look at this issue, please. It is not complex science. From a nutrition environmental medicine point of view, if something isn't required for human health, then it's almost certainly toxic in some way or form. Fluoride from artificial fertilizer production is a hazardous waste product. That is a massive fact. And tooth decay is caused by excessive sugar and poor oral behaviors. Modest benefits in caries have only been shown for topical application. Now, two very powerful institutions, or industries, should I say, are threatened by pushing back against fluoridation, and that's sugar and artificial fertilizer. And you don't think that central government hasn't been lobbied aggressively over the years by these industries? Of course they have. You know, and we can't help but wonder if the same things played out at a local level, perhaps in some places too. I'm not making any accusations or statements here. I'm just a student of human nature and history, and it's important to, look at all the influences on decision making at every level. The money at stake is huge. For instance, the sugar industry successfully commandeered and sidetracked for 50 years the incorrect targeting of saturated fat as the cause of heart disease, directing attention from its own partial culpability. Now, country after country has examined and rejected fluoridation, and New Zealand is now one of only 8 countries that mandates fluoridation of more than 50% of its water. Now, we should ask why. We are a minnow-sized country with a tiny gene pool of supposed experts that are turning New Zealand into a hermit kingdom scientifically, in our view, on this issue. Perhaps the next time earnest dental nurses from Te Whatu Ora come knocking with their limited cherry-picked and deceptive marketing, perhaps they should actually be questioned hard instead of deferred to as some sort of fount of all wisdom. Trends in medicine and dentistry come and go, and the history of progress in medicine is the history of the struggle against entrenched error, and is littered with naked emperors blinking in the hard glare of history. Fluoride is one of these, and I implore you, please, ladies and gentlemen, to be part of the solution. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Gilmore, you have a question?
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Shelton, and nice seeing you again after last night. I do have a question that sort of played on my mind but following the meeting last night. So you mentioned that you're not a current practicing doctor. I know still a registered doctor. But do you believe that your medical views around this topic are consistent with those of your former colleagues?
No, I don't, because many of my former colleagues won't have any views at all on this particular issue because they weren't trained in environmental medicine at the medical school. I certainly wasn't. And, you know, along the way, many of us develop particular special interests or things that float our boat and that we feel inspired and motivated to learn a lot more about and become activists over. So my institution in Australia that I used to work for, we've trained 10% now of Australian and New Zealand GPs in nutrition and environmental medicine, but that's 90% haven't been through that training. You know, I don't think that my, you know, my views, which I feel are hard-earned and have been tested, when you're standing up in front of a bunch of doctors teaching, you know, you need to have your facts straight. And we also need to, you know, recognize the uncertainty in the gray areas in some areas of scientific knowledge. But I don't feel that this is one that we need to any longer, you know, scratch our brows and try and decide what the truth is. I feel it's slam dunk, and to watch the attempts by another governmental power, not New Zealand's, you know, the most influential one there is, actually to suppress information that it's that one of its own important departments was tasked to look at the truth on, I think is alarming, and I think cuts across, you know, not just science, but plainly politics and economics as well.
I'd like to follow up, Trace.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and thanks for that reply, Dr. Shelton. And you know, you mentioned last night a couple of times, and just again now, about things being slam dunk. I often hear that when I speak, but I'll take it. I'll take it. So, divine intervention.
So I think you're to go no further.
I would love just to ask one more, if that's okay, and I appreciate that. But so you did mention a couple of times at that meeting that things are a slam dunk, and again today, and that it's not complex science. And we have heard that loud and clear from a huge number of people. What that's made me reflect a little bit, though, on is if that is the case, if it is so clear and if it is so slam dunk, what is the motive for the Ministry of Health, the New Zealand Medical Association, the New Zealand Dental Association, New Zealand Nurses Association? I mean, I could go on and on, New Zealand Rural Medical Practitioners. I think there were 17 sort of New Zealand specific groups. What would be their motive for, as it's been put to us before, them wanting to poison children by adding this into the water supply as medical professionals? And I know a few doctors. I haven't spoken about this particular issue with them, but they are good people. You know, they're in the caring profession. They are good people. If people are going and saying to them, we have clear, irrefutable evidence, it's slam dunk, it's really simple to understand, why would they be endorsing still for fluoride to be added into water?
Yeah, look, that's a really fantastic question, Scott, and I'm grateful to be asked because it means I can answer. I mean, the obvious answer is you'd have to ask them, number one. One of the takeaways that you know, I heard over and over again from my teaching nutrition to doctors was over and over again, they said the same thing. Why didn't anybody teach us this at medical school or when it would have been really useful? Why were we not given other strategies, other, you know, arrows in the quiver to use to bring to our work, you know, to understand foundational causes of disease and to look at diseases in terms of deficiencies, toxicities, imbalances, and all that sort of thing. There is, of course, in every profession, a very powerful echo chamber, if you like, or forces that work often subliminally or subconsciously within groups to maintain a narrative, to maintain a cohesion. I'm not saying this is what's happening, and I'm not speaking for the people in these organizations, but I have learned, and perhaps the hard way, to appreciate the power with which organizations need to maintain a public face of solidarity, and confidence, so that, you know, the people are calm and comfortable with the way they're being led. And until nutrition and environmental medicine is a foundational core of medical and allied medical training, then the current paradigm of disease treatment, which really reflects the way that many people think, will not be challenged, and will be the way that people will look at things. And for my own example, I mean, I think we were given 2 hours on dentistry at medical school, probably not more than that on nutrition. And so the way we learn things along the way is that we pick up what we think is a consensus view on often a large or complex area from an expert person or somebody we think is an expert, and we internalize that as being, that's what we need to know about this particular area. Now I'll get on, learning all the other stuff. We just don't have the time or necessarily the inquisitiveness, I would say, to second guess or challenge. And certainly when you're a young person, and you're grateful to be taught and to be starting out in your career, it's not wise or helpful to argue every single point. You make an assumption that somebody somewhere has tested and proved the validity of what you're being taught and told, and it's only later when we start to wonder. And of course, I, like many other people on qualification, was told by my dean, in 5 years, half of everything we've taught you will actually be proven to be wrong. The problem is, we won't know which half. So please spend your whole career trying to reconcile that and actually be with uncertainty, and be okay with the fact that a lot of what we think we know just ain't so. So that's a long-winded answer, I hope. But I you would have to ask those people. But I get the point you're making. Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you very, very much for presenting with us today. Welcome, Debbie.
Good afternoon. Firstly, I'd like to thank Mayor Tracy and those councillors who attended the public meeting last evening. I would have to say it's one of the largest public meetings that I have attended in Dannevirke, and it shows that there are many in the community interested in this issue. My name is Debbie Webster, and I am presenting the Stop Fluoridation of Tararua Drinking Water petition to the Council on behalf of Fluoride-Free Tararua. As Council will see from the petition, which was submitted prior to this meeting, 494 residents signed the paper copy, with a further 146 signing the online petition, which was administered by change.org. I have here another 66 residents who signed last night at the public meeting, so that's a total of 706 people have signed. You can see there are many living in this district who are totally against having this highly toxic substance added to the drinking water. As we know, the High Court found that the Director General of Health's directive to fluoridate unlawful because he failed to consider the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990, and that was the right to refuse medical treatment. The High Court has required a reconsideration of the directives. However, a resolution is not expected before September 24 at the earliest. While the judge also ruled that the directives still stood, the legal uncertainties around the judicial review and the unlawful directive could now open councils to legal ramifications if they proceed with starting fluoridation. In February of this year, the Director General granted Nelson City Council an extension of their directive until the 31st of December 2024. This was granted in recognition of the legal uncertainty surrounding the issue and the concern that the council could face litigation from opponents of fluoridation who do not wish to be medicated with an industrial byproduct. Be aware that this council may also find themselves facing the same significant litigation risk from opponents of fluoridation in this community should they proceed with a directive that is later found to be in breach of the New Zealand Bill of Rights. At last night's public meeting, Mayor Tracy advised that council would still follow the directive by continuing on with implementing the infrastructure for the plant, but advised those present that fluoridation would not be turned on until the outcome of the judicial review is available. In correspondence from the Ministry of Health to Tararua District Council dated the 19th of April 2024, the Director General stated the following: local authorities can ask for an extension to enable greater time to comply with directions to fluoridate, and I will consider such requests on a case-by-case basis in light of the circumstances. Currently, we have a major issue for Dannevirke residents, that being the state of the impounded water supply. We all know that the repairs are inevitable and will most likely start in the 24-25 year, and that this will come at considerable cost. Tararua District Council needs to ensure that we have a sustainable water supply by fixing the Dannevirke Reservoir. The cost for this should take precedence over any costs associated with adding fluoride to our water supply. The issues around the Dannevirke Reservoir and its repair costs, as well as the legal uncertainties at play and the litigation risk for Tararua District Council around fluoridation, should be reason enough for TDC to ask the Director General of Health to consider an extension to at least the 31st of December 2024. It is understood that initial funding for infrastructure has come from our taxes via central government to the Ministry of Health at a cost of around 11.3 million. Ongoing depreciation costs are most likely to be borne by the council, and ratepayers will be left to fund the ongoing costs such as operating costs, maintenance costs for items that need repair, and additional health and safety costs relating to working with a hazardous waste. An estimate given by the Tararua District Council of the cost to the ratepayers for the operation of the plant is in the vicinity of $16,000 per annum. Our rates are increasing at alarming levels, and I believe most ratepayers would much rather see the resources and money that is currently being spent on fluoride spent on activities in this community which are more important. Considering that residents do not want fluoride in their water and the ongoing issues with the impounded water supply, we urge council to seek an extension immediately to at least the 31st of December or until the outcome of the judicial review proceedings is known. Thank you.
Just check if there's any questions, then I'm happy to formally receive that from you, Debbie. And is there any chance I can get a copy of your notes as well? That would be really great. Does anyone have any questions for Debbie? Councillor Wards.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. We have a copy on as part of our agenda, to which the addresses have been redacted, quite rightly, to protect privacy. Are you able to, I appreciate that you've been through and you've filtered out signatures that aren't in the district. Are you able to give us a bit of a sense of how many of those signatories are actually connected to the Dannevirke water supply?
I can't, because it went out to Pongaroa, it went down to Pahiatua, Woodville, Northwood. So it was basically the whole of the Tararua district that we were seeking signatures from, because we know that like Woodville and Pahiatua are actually on the cards to be fluoridated as well. So it was a petition for the whole of the Tararua to get people, on board with pushing back on this.
Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. This question, don't know if this is appropriate, but it might be directed to you, Your Worship, in response to some of what Debbie has just talked about. There was a specific request during that speech about seeking an extension, which I believe that you covered off in the meeting last night, but just wondering if that's something that perhaps you could cover off again about your formal request through to the Director General.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. And Linda, I do have a copy of this for you along with the statement last night to give to you. I'll read and hopefully this will clarify it for you. So this was in response when the Chief Executive received his response. I followed up the same day with this letter to Dr. Safati. Kia ora, Dr. Safati. Following the extension given to Nelson City Council, the Tararua District Council also seek clarification of our directive. Tararua District Council has procured and is currently constructing the required fluoridation plant off-site for the Denneberg water supply. Our on-site commission and completion is on schedule for the 31st of August 2024. While the implications of the High Court's judgment are being considered by yourselves, we are fielding questions from both councillors and the public regarding the risk we are potentially exposed to with possible legal challenges. We request the ability to delay making the plant operational until legal matters have been finalised. If this isn't possible, we seek an assurance that the government will support in respect of legal costs or Crown law assistance in the event that there is a legal challenge to us proceeding with the introduction of fluoride on the 1st of September 2024. This issue is contentious within our community and we have received a petition which we will forward to you once it is formally received at our council meeting on the 24th of April. Our council respect the public health reasons for the introduction of fluoride and will comply with the fluoridation directive. However, our preference is to have certainty on the legal aspects of the directive and not place our council at risk of facing legal challenge and costs. Nā kounoa, Tausi Kolos Nia. So I'll give you copies of those, both Linda and if there's no further questions from anyone, I'm happy to come and receive you. Thank you. Now I'm just gonna juggle the agenda because the item that you'll be interested in is receiving that petition. So, councillors, I'm going to move forward and up the agenda. We move to item 9.1. Sorry, page 37. Right, item 9.1. Ellie, do you want to run through this quickly, or which I'm happy to. Okay. Right, so the presentation here, so there is an item being prepared by Ellie, our Manager of Democracy Services, just stating the reason for the report, the background. I'm not sure if you've seen the paper. Have you had a look on the agenda, Linda, at the paper that's on council agenda? Yes, okay. I will run through it. So it just outlines the petition coming to council in the background. It also talks a petition from Fluoride Free Tararua has been received by council's chief executive. The petition has been signed by 640 people, and I note there that you have received a further 66 signatures there. The statement in the petition is, we, the undersigned residents in the Tararua area, one, advise the Tararua District Council we do not want fluoride added to our drinking water. Two, remind the Tararua District Council that its duty is to the communities it serves, not central government policy. And three, call on the Tararua District Council to seek an interim injunction restraining the Director General of Health from issuing a directive under Section 116E of the Health Act 1956 on the Tararua District Council to fluoridate the drinking water until the court case against the Director General by New Health New Zealand, currently before the court, is decided. So then it just runs through the standing at the requirements for the presentation of petitions is set out in our standing orders under section 17. So form of petitions presented by the petitioner and then presented by the member. So we've received that formally in our agenda and also in paper copy here today. So then in conclusion on the paper, when petitions are presented to council, the council has the following options: to pass a resolution to formally receive the petition, to request the chief executive to provide a report to a future meeting on options relating to the statement in the petition, and to forward the petition to another agency should the petition relate to matters aligned with the process undertaken by that agency, or to decline to receive the petition. So that's what that outlines the paper. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you very much for your work. I am happy to make a motion in this regard unless you've got a discussion. Motion on the table.
Put a motion on the table. I'm comfortable with that.
So I am happy to.
Just pop your mic on. Sorry, Councillor.
Apologies, Your Worship. I move that we receive the petition and forward a copy to the Director General of Health, noting part 1 of the petition where she is the decision maker.
Motion's been moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. So we will receive that petition. We will forward it also to the Director General of Health. Just in noting the second point of your petition, our duty to serve communities and not central government policy. This isn't policy, this has been legislative, just noting that difference. Right, thank you, councillors. And thank you very much. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or you're very welcome to go. Thank you. I should have just noted that meeting is recorded, so you will be able to see that up on YouTube. Travel safe. Did very well holding that sign the whole time. That was it's hard work.
I hope you appreciate it.
I did. I was really noted. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Right. I should have done this earlier. Councillors, declarations of conflicts of interest in relation to today's meeting. Public forum. Here to be none. Confirmation of the minutes. If I can do the minutes of council's meeting on page 5. Can I get somebody to move those as a true and correct record? Councillor Sutherland, second to Councillor Wallace. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And we'll just go through those page by page. I'm just going to take my agenda out. Right, page 5. Page 6. Page 7. 8, 9, 10, page 11, 12, page 16, page 14, page 15, and page 16. Thank you, councillors. And then we move, if I can go to the extraordinary meeting. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Sorry to jump in there. I think just before we move, I think it's very inaccurate record and just want to signal that I will have that.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. Okay, before we move that, Councillor Gilmore, I'll just to because the things just to find the place with him. Right, the extraordinary meeting on page 17. Before I take the motion for those, the set of minutes, page 17, page 18. Correct. I've actually got a note on my own minutes. But Councillor Gilmore.
I'll let, perhaps if you say what you want.
So the note that I had on my minutes is that I'm sure that that vote was called for division and there were votes against. So the request for those two to be recorded as such. So that was. But they were definitely requested to be recorded as against. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much. I do recall requesting for mine and others agreed. I also listened to the recording. That was a little bit muffled within the recording, but certainly it was my intent that I would like my vote recorded.
And I'm comfortable for that because that was the intention. It's the two votes recorded against. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Wards. Sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I don't want to speak for others. On the bottom of page 18, against was Councillors Wards, Franklin, Wallace, and myself. But speaking for myself, I certainly would like my vote recorded.
Can I just check in with you, Ali, on the recording? So it was a little bit muffled, but the names that you got on the recording or where your thoughts were?
Anyone specifically saying we can vote against, because you can vote against, but unless you say, and I wish my vote recorded, it doesn't get put in the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that might be the case.
There's a specific requirement standing orders that you have to actually say, I want my vote recorded.
Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I did ask for my vote to be recorded.
It's difficult to hear.
At this point that I would like my vote recorded. This was the vote where there was a casting vote, so there was 4 votes against. So it's been media. And I think it's important for the record if people wish to see how people voted that they can. Thank you.
I'll just check with each of those councillors. So Councillor Gilmore would like a vote recorded against. Councillor Wards, yes. Councillor Franklin, Councillor Wallace. I'll amend that. Thank you. And that is one of the challenges, councillors, and we'll have some discussion with the chief executive, I think, around the chamber and the microphones and actually being able to pick those things up. But certainly my intention. Thank you. Moved Councillor Gilmore, seconded Councillor Wards. And apologies if that's my error, but that was the intention.
Okay, the microphones, if they're too blocked, like your name's in front of it, the sound pickup can't. So we're just going to make sure that they're not too close to your name tags or anything.
Councillor Long, I'll just get you to move your one across there so I can pick up. Councillor Sutherland.
I'm moving quite smooth. I don't want to listen to that.
Thanks. Right, okay, that deals with the council minutes. I'm just going to move on to the community boards and community committee reports. So Can I have somebody move those as a block? Councillor Gilmore, seconded Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. And we will, that's for the Positively Woodville Community Committee, Explore Pahiatua Community Committee, Ikitahuna Community Board. Right. So I'll just go through the Positively Woodville minutes, page 20. Just noting, councillors, the Mad Hatters date there, if anyone wants to pop that into their diaries early. Page 21. Just Councillor Gilmore, you'll just update the committee that the change to the PARS funding that we may need to discuss, that may not be possible in the next meeting. Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. Page 23. And I just had a query on the gardening contract, Councillor Gilmore, that's the town gardens. There's going to be a variation next time. Which garden is that, or is that in general? Just keen to understand. Sorry, item B.
Sorry, Your Worship, it was a quick update during the meeting. I don't have details of that, but at a high level. Making sure that we have the appropriate plants planted. So hopefully it will end up to being a reduction of operational expenditure and what support that the community might provide. That worked on with Adele before her departure. There is still more to discuss, and that's being discussed with Fontaine currently. So perhaps we can ask for a report at some point to get more.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. And just on item G, the flag tracks, really good luck with that application. Those flag tracks in Ikitahuna are just outstanding, both from health and safety, to be able to put those flags up and to be able to change it. And they look fantastic when you go through with, you know, the Anzac flags as well. So fingers crossed. That's all on page 23, page 24. We move on to Explore Pahiatua Community Committee, page 25. Page 26. And just down the bottom there, just in regards to Ellie's letter, I'll respond to that, but I think that's a really important part of getting ready for the government's review and working with our communities and business owners of what they would like to see within those changes. Page 27. Page 28. 29. 30. And 31. And sorry, if I could just make one correction on page 31. I did balk the flags for the flag day. They were loaned to me by the embassy. I certainly did not purchase them, and I will need to return them. They are the embassy's own flags.
I know that. I'll bet I'm not sure it's top next meeting.
Right. Moving on to page 32, the Ikitahuna Community Board. Page 32, 33, 34, and page 35. Dennybrook Community Board minutes.
The meeting is only.
Hey,
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it. takes care of that. We'll move into reports. So we've covered item 9.1. Just move to item 9.2. Right, 9.2, draft dangerous, affected and unsanitary buildings policy. James.
You don't ask any questions. Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors, Chief Executive. So today's report is to seek permission for consultation on the draft dangerous, affected sanitary buildings policy 2024. And this is to replace our current policy, which is the dangerous and unsanitary buildings policy of 2017. Legally, the policy has to be in place as required under Section 131 of the Building Act, and it's supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. So we're a little late with this one, but there were other pressing things on the agenda. We now have to take into account affected buildings, and that has been placed into the policy. Affected buildings are buildings that are adjacent to or beside a deemed dangerous building or a dangerous dam, which are prescribed under the Act. We've also made a few changes, which we've outlined in the report, but just as a quick summary, it's more taking into account other acts that we can use for unsanitary buildings. Sometimes it's more prudent to use the Health Act, for example. We don't have any actual dangerous buildings at the moment in the district, so it's quite a high standard. And so a lot of the time, if you don't have the other references to the other acts, you sort of box yourself into a corner. So yeah. So attached to that is also the statement of proposal for consultation and a feedback form. Thanks to Ellie. I'm happy to take any questions.
It's from Councillor Johns.
Tracy. On page 114, Jim, the description of an unsanitary building, we talk about how it's situated or constructed, or it is in a state of disrepair. There are a couple of buildings in Woodville that for some years we've talked about before. Do they fall into the category of a building that's in a state of disrepair? I mean, they're not necessarily insanitary, but possibly a wider definition of that too.
So through your worship, under the unsanitary building term under the Building Act, though, it has to be injurious or likely to be injurious to health. So although it may be leaking, it's not actually enough to deem it dangerous. It has to be something like perhaps sewage is broken under the house and leaking and that sort of thing.
If it's a fix, which it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's go to Brian for a comment.
So through your worship, and I know exactly the building Councillor Johns is referring to. At the time, when someone was occupying it, you could argue the fact is that it would be unsanitary and likely to be injurious. However, with no one living in it, it does remove that aspect from it, and then you've got to look, can someone be pretty much in imminent danger from that building? While it's empty, it's incredibly unlikely, and from where the location is, it's even unlikely for the public. There are exceptions around this, around if you have a house that's almost burnt down and about to fall down, then you would board that up or quickly get on to pulling it down. But for that house, it probably doesn't fit within this requirement unless someone was living in it.
Councillor Long.
For you, Mayor Tracy, and so to carry on to that, to Eketahuna, the building that you're aware of, does this state of disrepair, and also the veranda, does that create a hazard to passers-by under that veranda?
Through your worship, yeah, that building, it did meet that criteria while the glass was loose and there was flapping parts in the wind that could come off and hurt the public. But since then, that's been addressed. So the building officers have inspected that building again, and they're satisfied that it doesn't meet the dangerous criteria at this time. But I mean, it may deteriorate and then we can take another look.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm curious to understand, number 6, you referred to there as heritage buildings, Jim, in the policy. I'm curious to understand, we've got a heritage building empty, not too far from where we're sitting. What catalyses something like a building like that that's unoccupied? You talked about sewage and stuff like that, but do we inspect our buildings regularly to make sure they're not unsanitary, or would there have to be a complaint or something happen, for instance, to be able to?
Yeah, through your worship, we normally act on complaints, or if we observe something that's obviously, might be flapping in the wind, it's about to fall down. There were a number of verandas, shop verandas in the Gisborne CBD, for example, where they were propped up by blocks and building jacks and all sorts of things. So that was visibly obvious to building officers walking past for their coffee every morning. So that sort of thing. So, but it's mainly complaints.
Thank you.
No further questions. We do have a recommendation on page 107. Happy to read the recommendation. Councillor Wallace, you're happy to move that recommendation? So there's 1.1 to receive the report, 1.2 and 1.3. Comfortable with that? Yep, and happy to second that, Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. If we move on to item 9.4, requests for information under the Local Government Official Information and Marketing Act. Sorry, 9.3. All right, that is not flagged.
He's not getting off.
Put my flag in. Late getting home, marking it up. Right, page 121. So the regulatory services update, item 9.3. So the recommendation there is to receive that report. Jim, do you want to cover that off? Are there any highlights there for you? And then I'll just move into some questions from the councillors. I'm sure there are some.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. So I've been directed to report to full council now with the regulatory services update report. So this report covers from the 1st of July 2023 through to the end of the third quarter, 31st of March 24. And it's the ongoing statistical information which I'm interested in. And there, on the earthquake-prone buildings, I thought you may be interested to hear the latest from central government. So I printed off this and highlighted the main points. So the Minister for Building and Construction has announced the bringing forward of a review of the seismic risk management in existing buildings and an extension of non-lapsed earthquake-prone building remediation deadlines. And the Minister has indicated that the review will be extensive. Under the legislation, at the moment, there is no immediate change to the earthquake-prone building system and its requirements, but territorial authorities must continue to identify potentially earthquake-prone buildings within the existing legislative timeframes. No changes are proposed to the requirements at this time, but later this year we will be required to reissue physical earthquake-prone building notices and update the register showing each building's new deadline for completing the seismic strengthening work. So basically what they're saying is from the 2nd of April, providing your building has not expired on deadlines, you now have an extra, well, person has 4 extra years plus another 2 if they're required to meet the deadlines to bring the building up to scratch. So currently in a high-risk zone such as Te Arua, where we've got 7.5 years, once it's been deemed earthquake prone, to bring the building up to the construction standard. That's now what, that's 11.5 years plus another 2. So they are looking at what actually defines the earthquake prone building as far as the amount of risk, where it's situated and all that sort of thing with the new legislation, in the hope that there's just no carte blanche across New Zealand when they hardly get earthquakes up in Northland. So there might be tougher requirements in parts of New Zealand to other parts, which seems fair. But at this point, we box on with those extended timelines until the legislation is updated later this year.
Any questions for Jim on that report? Councillor Wallace and Councillor Wards.
Yeah, just to you, Mayor Tracy, just a quick one, Jim. How many buildings in each town? Sorry to be a pain. You only got a total there.
You mean the total of the earthquake prone?
Yeah.
Like
just roughly.
Well, we've sent 138 potentially earthquake prone letters out.
That's across the district.
Yes.
So you haven't got the.
I can find it for you. I don't have it on me.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it would just be interesting because to see how our demographics work out with what's going to be standing in 13.5 years' time.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Councillor Wards.
Your Worship. A commendation firstly to you, Jim, having a team fully staffed and looking as fantastic as the team and the work that is coming out of there. So congratulations to you. I have a question with regard to, it doesn't have a table number on it, but if you look under the building services, the applications for relocated dwellings, how does those figures compare with last year? The reason I ask is I don't know if anyone takes a drive down Pinfold Road every now and again, but almost on a monthly basis.
Right, somebody
There's another relocatable in there, and there's one at the moment on stilts, and I'm thinking one good gale and it is just gonna boom.
I think it's down now.
So I guess I'm asking, have we got a sense of, is this number going up or is it pretty much status quo? Without the detail, but just, yeah.
Through your Worship, to be honest, I am not able to tell you without the comparison, but what I'll do, I can find out for you and I'll get back to you, but in the next report, we'll put last year's.
Last year's would
yeah.
be wonderful
Yeah,
because
yep. That's
it just seems to be a gut feel that it's just going mad now.
There has been, not for relocated dwellings, but there has been a slight increase in consents received for new builds. So that's something, it's not a huge increase, but.
Councillor Johns.
Mayor Tracy. Yes, I was going to make a comment about the relocatables 18, July last year. That's about a third of all buildings, by my calculation, are relocatables. It seems to be could be a sign for the future that they're often cheaper, more cheaply constructed because they're all constructed inside and a lot of computer work done. I think we're going to see a whole lot more of them in the district. I know that we don't get the credit for the new constructions, do we? As a council, Palmerston North gets it, or New Plymouth, or wherever they're made. But 18, about a third of all of them are relocatables.
The inspections are done on site, except for the last ones, Highland.
Do have some built here. Any further questions? Jim's report, just having a look. Yep, I was just checking. I didn't have anything further. So that's moved. The recommendation on page 121 has been moved by Councillor Wards, seconded by Councillor Long. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Jim. Right, now we'll move to item 9.4, the request for information under the Local Government Official Information Act. Right, before we move the report we received, we got some questions from councillors. This is a very, very interesting. Councillor Johns.
Page 133, Your Worship. About of information re drag queen related functions hosted by the council. Recall being invited to.
The response to that request was that we have not hosted any.
It's topical.
Yes. Are there any other questions, councillor Gilmore?
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to reflect on the multiple requests by an individual and to say that I'm delighted to see through social media that action has been taken in at least one of those cases. Services team for the amount of work that they're doing on it and for their very, very, very concise, which is now public, their very, very concise explanation as to why things should be charged and what they are charged for. So a personal thanks through to the team for doing that. I think that's outstanding.
Yeah. I've not had a response to the information on how it would cost how much it would cost to provide that information. So the information won't be provided until the estimated amount has been charged or the agreement to pay has been received.
So that was my next question. What's been the response? But
if they email and commit to pay the charge, we will provide the information and bill them for it. And if they fail to pay the charge, well, then it goes to our debt collectors like any other unpaid bill that someone's committed to pay for.
Thank you, councillor Gilmore.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just my last question. I always find this a really great report, so I'm really glad that this is coming in through our agendas. I would like to just jump to the proactive release and publishing the official information. I note that this has been in this report a couple of times, which I completely understand. I'm just wondering through you, Mayor Tracy, if we could just get a rough indication on what that project looks like and when that will likely go live.
Unfortunately, I've had a bit of a hiccup in my productivity in recent weeks. So I have a large backlog of stuff that needs to take priority, and the LTP work is one of those things that is adding to priority list. So this has had to go on the back burner for now. It shouldn't take too much to get the website provisioned. I've got the draft ready to go, but it's just, redacting the information ready to go up. That will take some time, but I really need two hands to do that effectively. It's very hard to control the mouse with my non-dominant hand for doing that work.
Thanks, Sally. And look, I'm sure when that does happen, even I'm looking forward to being able to see some of that information and understand it. Would be great, but certainly not until you're all better. Right. Are there any further questions on that report? Otherwise, I'll seek a mover for the recommendation on page 131. Moved to Councillor Gilmore, seconded Councillor Wallace. All those in favour, please say aye. We'll just move on. Correspondence. There is a copy of the fast track consenting bill, and I also read earlier the correspondence that was sent to the Director General of Health. Move on to portfolio reports. Is there anyone with anything that they wish to report on from their community committees or other organisations? Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick update on Norsewood
connectivity. So the RCG have been out to the site and done a site examination, and they've brought together all of the experts in each field required to approve the site. And it sounds as if they never ever go this far without it actually going ahead. So it's pretty exciting news for Northwood, and we should have the absolute final announcement very shortly. So great work, and we've got a lot to thank Mike Butterick for. He's really pushed play on this with the help of Kieran. So yeah, brilliant.
Well done. They'll be some very excited. Hopefully before we have our meeting out at Northwood, we might have some information on that. That'll be well received. Okay. Is there anything further, Councillor Sutherland?
Thanks, me, Tracy. I did mention it in Councillor Sharon's meeting earlier on, but just to mention it again in the public meeting that you and I and Hamish attended the Road Controlling Authorities conference yesterday, which did morph across into quite a bit of infrastructural discussion. It was really, really illuminating and valuable, I thought, but just to let councillors know, we'll put some facts and figures and give you our views of that meeting, because it was interesting to say the least, but I think it was valuable to be there. So perhaps for the ICM meeting or Mayor Tracy's next meeting, we'll have some stuff for you to look at. Hamish himself and the mayor will get together. It was a valuable day out of our lives, really. In my view, anyway. I think Mayor Tracy probably felt the same. Sure.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. And look, it was the forum and the reason that I hadn't responded to the invitation to the fluoride meeting, because actually I was weighing up, the importance of that one. So the extra long day was absolutely worth it. So that's good. But it was a long day, but certainly a very, very powerful meeting. So we'll get those notes and bits out to councillors to have some of those conversations. Anything further? I did just under Merrill Meadows, councillors, just to check in with everybody, just around attendance for tomorrow for Anzac services. I've actually just made contact with Councillor Chase because there is a small service that I wasn't aware of at Kaitoke Marae at the War Memorial Hall there. So I've asked if Councillor Chase would attend there as well. So everyone's all set for their attendances. Thank you.
Just a question, Mayor Tracy. Can I just ask you? You're not doing Wimbledon tomorrow, you? No, that's all right. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, I just checking in. So I'm doing Civic, Danny Vic. So you're going to Kentucky Civic, pardon? Kentucky, okay.
And with you.
I might get the other flowers out just in case.
I think so. Council Chase, what time is the Kaitoke? 10 o'clock. So maybe you'll be laying the wreath. Is that a possibility for you to lay the wreath as well as play the bugle at Northwood?
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Did you get any poppy socks from Northwood? Poppy socks.
Poppy socks, yeah.
Sorry. The New Zealand Natural Clothing have produced some poppy socks, which when you purchase them, $5 goes to the Northwood RSA. So they're a great pair of socks. Oh, they're all sold out. 200 pairs.
Once a year for the next 30
years. Wow, that is. I wasn't aware of that. That's.
But you can still, Your Worship, you can still text $3 to the RSA. Please don't give up yet.
Absolutely, and thanks for noting that, because actually the Poppy Day appeal is their only source of funds for those veterans, so a very, very important part of it. Okay, and are there any other items for the agenda? Appear to be none. Okay, thank you, councillors. With that, I will officially close our meeting, and I'll close us with our district whakataaki. Let the winds of the Rohini and Tararua give you strength. Let the waters of the Manawatu nourish you. For we are the Pounamu of Te Tāpiri Nui o Whātonga. Kia ora. No.